think. There you go. We are now recording. Hi, welcome everybody. I am actually recording this conversation from First Presbyterian Church. I'm actually in the building, the only one in a big empty cavernous space because of COVID. Thanks for being willing to join us here today. As we get started, I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves. And I guess I'll begin. My name is Reverend Matthew Schultz. I've asked everyone here to please just call me Matt. And I'm the pastor here at First Presbyterian Church in Anchorage, Alaska. Kevin, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Kevin McGee. I'm the current president of the NAACP Anchorage Branch 1000. And I've been a resident of Anchorage since June of 1972.
Now, I don't want to be rude, but that's 2 months before I was born.
I don't like you no more.
Well, I won't tell you when I was born because it was probably about 5 or 6 months after Matt was.
There you go.
They go for you too, Justin. Okay, Kenneth, what's your reason?
Well, I was crawling around that time. So.
So, are you guys insinuating I'm old?
No, sir. We would never say that.
Wise, you would say.
Okay.
Kevin, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Ken McCoy. I'm the Deputy Chief of Police for the Anchorage Police Department, where I've been now for closing in on 26 years. I've been in Anchorage since 1985, a graduate from Bartlett High School.
Nice. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Golden bear.
And Justin, if you would.
Thanks, Matt. My name's Justin Dahl. I'm the Chief of Police. I've been with APD for a little over 24 years. Just like Ken, I moved to Anchorage in 1985, but I graduated from West High School.
Gotcha. Well, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start by letting you know what initiated my reaching out to all of you. My denomination, the Presbyterian Church in the USA, is engaging in something called the Matthew 25 Initiative, based in Scripture in the 25th chapter of Matthew. And one of the things that is, one of the pillars of that initiative is to dismantle systemic racism. And that's an umbrella of things that we would want to be doing and participating in. And one of the things that we decided to do is to get a sign for the front yard of the church that says Black Lives Matter. This, of course, led to a large discussion. Most churches have the same dividing lines as our country does. And so with a phrase like Black Lives Matter, it carries a lot of baggage into the conversation that people bring from their own lives, their own families, their own sources of news, and so on. And what we decided, our governing body here in Anchorage decided that we wanted to go ahead with that sign. We've got that on order, but we wanted to at the same time express our support for police officers. And we wanted to find the best way to support our friends and family members and church members who are people of color, and at the same time support police officers and perhaps help to show that you can do both at the same time in a way that's loving and compassionate. We also decided that our sign would read, Black Lives Matter to God and to us. Because for us, it's a theological statement of the human value of every person of color. And so that's how our particular phrasing was. And we wanted to reach out to Kevin also and the NAACP and see how does that ring to your ears. That having been said, we wanted to bring you all in here for a conversation to teach us, people of faith, what is a faithful way to move forward, in your opinion? And then as residents of this country and of this city, what is the best way to not only support both of your constituent groups, but also to build the Anchorage that we're all hoping for? That having been said, then, I'm going to throw it open to you guys and ask all of you to maybe start off by saying, what do you think the current situation in Anchorage is like? How are relations between the police and the community, particularly the community of people of color?
Well, I think we should let our elder statesman speak first.
Oh, boy. We have not had that many complaints come before the NAACP as far as complaints being associated with APD. But we have had a number of various complaints concerning other entities within Anchorage, such as ABT and ACS, as it pertains to students of color that are attending, that are some that are alumni, as well as some that are currently attending ACS. An issue that came up that I find of great concern was that students of color being currently addressed in a derogatory manner, being called coons, the N-word, various forms of degradation being brought against these individuals. No accountability from ACS. We have actually requested a meeting with the principal, I guess that's what I had the title, the principal of the ACS, and they have subsequently not even acknowledged the requests that we sent to them. These number of students that have provided the complaints to us, I mean, it's 125 different individuals that have filed complaints. Some of the faculty at ACS in reference to being at sporting events, whereas the coaches actually physically abusing some of the students, being pushed or slapped in the face and so forth, and nothing being done about it. That's one of the biggest issues that we have that's facing us right now. We'd still like to also find out information as to the rally that Matt and I and a lot of others participated in that was down in the town square with respect to the vandalism that occurred to the Black Lives Matter banner. Haven't heard anything as it pertains to that, and possibly because it's still an ongoing investigation. But the fact of the matter is that nothing's been told to the community as to the status. COVID has caused a wide array of problems as far as getting together and so forth. This Zoom being one particular solution, but there's nothing that beats the actual face-to-face communication and being in the same room and seeing each other. But I can appreciate the electronic aspect with Zoom, so we do as best as we can.
It's what we got to do these days. Ken and Justin, just to throw the question to you as well, how would you describe the current situation in Anchorage?
Well, I'll go first, and then I'll for sure let Ken chime in, of course. I think we're really lucky. Anchorage is a very diverse city. I think that we are somewhat more accustomed to our diversity than some other places. And I think living in Alaska makes that perspective a little different. We're used to having things come up in Alaska where the environment presents us with challenges that we kind of have to unite to face together. Things like the big earthquake we had a couple years ago, sometimes just typical Anchorage winter weather. I think Alaska has more of a frontier spirit where people are used to helping each other out in times of need. And I think that helps us get past some of our differences at times that the rest of the country tends to get hung up on. I mentioned before we started, I think that the Anchorage Police Department's relationship with the community is good. I think that we're very fortunate. Ken and I talk every day about how fortunate we feel to work someplace where that relationship is good. We inherited a good relationship when we took over as department leaders. And, we really feel like it's our duty every day to maintain and improve that relationship. It's something that is very sacred to, I think, every employee at APD. I think everyone here recognizes that. So we feel very lucky, but that's not ever to suggest that there isn't always room for improvement. So we're always looking for things that we can do better to continue to improve upon that. Ken, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with the chief 100%. We're very fortunate here in Anchorage to have the relationship that we do with the community. And that is something that we, cherish that relationship. And that's something that we put a lot of proactive work into prior to a lot of the unrest that we've seen going on across the country. We really have set the tone and emphasized with our officers that we want a good relationship with the community, and we have done a number of things to help facilitate that. We've reinstituted a community policing posture. We've programmed in various events around town where our officers can interact in a non-law enforcement capacity with the community, things like our Coffee with a Cop events and so forth. Just things to get the community and the police department connected, and really where we're just building trust. And trust is, of the utmost importance for the community and the police department. As we've seen things transpire this year across the country, we realize that we're not perfect and we're not immune to a lot of the things that have transpired, and it's caused us to vigorously continue these conversations with the community to look at how we can be better, how we can serve the community, and how we can just continue to have that level of trust. And that's what we're doing here today, where we want to continue this conversation and just continue to build and be better.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. And I do think that comes through when I've been asking around to, members of my church and members of the community what questions they might have that they would want to have asked here today. There were actually quite few questions. I think most people are getting the sense that the police department is reaching out and building that trust in that way. So that's very encouraging to me. But as you said, there's always room for improvement. And Kevin, you mentioned the rally that you and I spoke at recently. And the thing that stands out to me at that event is not the vandalism, because that strikes me as a knucklehead. That's not a theological term, probably not a term Jesus would choose, but it's the best I can do. That's just one individual making a bad choice, probably. The thing that stands out to me about that event was the people who were counter-protesting, if you want to phrase it that way, intentionally taking actions to interfere and intimidate, walking around with large weapons, staring people down, and even shouting vulgar words at the speakers as they were speaking. Whereas I do want to lift up all the positive things that we've all mentioned so far, we can't turn a blind eye to that aspect of our city. And also today in the news, there's a story out there about the Save Anchorage Facebook group, which is really a kind of a gathering place of a lot of racist and hateful comments and speech and content. You mentioned there's always room for improvement. What do you think all of us can do together to make Anchorage a place where those things are not taking place, and certainly not to the same extent?
Kevin, do you want to go first, or if you want to think, one of us can jump in?
Yeah.
Sure. You can't change what's in people's hearts. There's not a thing you can do about it. You can only hope and pray that maybe someone will see the light and say, okay, maybe I am doing the wrong thing. I look at my past history, where I was born and raised and grew up in until Uncle Sugar got hold of me. But I was born and raised in Oakland, California, and attended rallies and such at Cal Berkeley. So if you know anything about the historical aspect of Cal Berkeley, I've been in various protests since I was in my early teens and so forth. Actually got tear gassed by the National Guard back in the day. But I have seen some instances, and like everyone has been saying, we're lucky that here within Anchorage itself, we don't have that much of a problem with police relations and the community as a whole. But once you, and this is my opinion, once you go outside of the boundaries of Anchorage, a lot of things change insofar as both police and public relations. Because as my wife has entitled it, once you get outside of, get past the outskirts of Palmer and maybe past Wasilla, she's nicknamed that particular geographical location as Deliverance Country. We've had some, the wife and I have had some racial encounters when we went down to Seward and such. And me being a disabled combat vet, and everybody normally sees me, I'm always wearing my Vietnam veteran cap, and which I'm proud of. But you get treated totally different once you get outside of the city limits, and things are a lot different, and you have to mentally and physically sometimes prepare yourself for whatever the outcome is. I think that it would be advantageous. I know we've had reestablished the community, was it like a community patrol aspect and so forth, but as far as my organization, I mean, it would be advantageous if every once in a while we could invite Justin or Ken, one of you guys to a general membership meeting. Obviously now everything is on Zoom, so, but just to be a part of the discussion and find out if there are any questions or concerns within the community from the NAACP approach. And like I said, we haven't had much, but we recently just had this issue. It's an ongoing issue with the ACS and ABT. And never know what that may lead to. I mean, like I said, we've had some complaints that there were reports made to APD about the physical assaults, but nothing came about it. So this might be something to look into.
Yeah, we're always happy to come and visit anytime. So, anytime you want to extend an invitation, we're always happy to visit with you all. I think back to Matt's question, kind of like what can we do as Anchorage residents? I understand where Kevin's coming from. I don't know that I'd say it's impossible to change what's in someone's heart. I think it's very difficult. But in my mind, I think, myself and Kevin and Ken, we're all have military experience. And so sometimes I fall back on that. And I think we lead from the front. We lead by example. And we lead lives, and through our outspoken words and our actions, we show people the right way to treat each other, the right way to live, treat everyone with respect. That's sort of our base operating state at APD, and that's what we teach people when they come in, and that's what we reinforce throughout their career, is we treat everyone with respect. And I think it's really difficult to sort of do the kinds of things that Kevin's talking about that he's experienced if you are starting off with a position of treating everyone around you with respect. It makes it hard to treat someone differently just based on the way that they look. So I think that we can have an effect on people in our community that maybe or don't have that in their heart. When I think that the power of community and peer pressure can be very, very powerful. And if we all, as leaders are acting that way, I think that we can draw other people into living their lives that way. So to me, it's a matter of leadership. And I think that as leaders in our communities, all of us here today are leaders in our communities. I think that setting that example is the best way that we can change, people's behavior. And like Kevin said, ultimately try to influence what's in people's hearts. Because we're all human, and human beings we love to be part of the group. And if we see that the larger group is behaving that way, people are going to want to follow. And so I just think it's incumbent upon us to lead our lives that way and be that example.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. And but we all acknowledge that, racism exists, and no community is fully immune from it. And what we're seeing here in 2020 is some very divisive times. I think there's people in groups who are actively trying to tear us apart. And that's where, like the chief mentioned, we're all leaders in our areas in the community, and it's incumbent upon us to come together and not allow these forces to tear us apart, and to show our community and the rest of the world, hey, this is what it looks like to treat each other with dignity and respect, and to all be able to contribute to a community. As diverse as we all can contribute and feel welcome and appreciated. And we have to set that example. But at the same time, we have to recognize there are racist elements out there who get up every day with the goal of tearing us apart. And I think we're seeing it take place right now, that people are trying to actively push this country into opposite ends of the spectrum. And we need to find a way to come back together and, as one, to move forward and make life better for everyone.
Thank you for that, Ken. I think that's the essential starting point is always acknowledging the truth. And as you said, we have to start by acknowledging that there is racism. I feel very often those who seek to, silence this conversation start by saying there's no racism in America. And if you don't begin with a certain shared premise of reality, it's hard to step forward from there. And I would say step number 2 would have to be compassion. Now that we've decided what truth is, what actually exists, we can then figure out what the next step is to do what's right. And Ken, I think you perhaps are uniquely situated, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a unique perspective of being a person of color who is also a police officer. And I would like to learn from you in terms of some specifics, such as if you saw a church with Black Lives Matter out front, is that something that makes you feel uncomfortable or something you think is a sign of support? And then in general, these divisions that are tearing the country apart in many ways, how has your life and work shown you perhaps a perspective that the rest of us can learn from?
Great. Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for asking that. So you're right. I have a foot in both worlds, and and really, when I talk about the divisiveness that's going on internally, I feel that I'm being pulled in opposite directions, and so when I have this conversation, I have to think back to when I was a young boy. Growing up in Virginia. And, my grandmother would often have conversations with me about being a Black man in America. And I remember those conversations as a young boy, being told that, I would have to work, twice as hard as a white man to accomplish things in this world. And, that was just kind of the starting point for me growing up, that things weren't going to be equal. And it was just something that was accepted at that time. And I think now there's been a lot of, people waking up to that concept and having these conversations, which is a good thing. And so as part of this movement, you mentioned the Black Lives Matter signs. It's become so political at this point that you're either for something or you're against it. And it's really hard to have a meaningful conversation when those symbols, whether it's Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, have become so polarizing. And so those, trying to have a conversation with those symbols as the forefront has proven to be very difficult. People take their positions and they don't budge from them. So, I try to, stay out of that fray completely, and that, let's have a real conversation, take the symbology out of it, and talk about what the real issues are. And so as a Black man, I've experienced, racism throughout my life, different things that, I would categorize that way. I have family members and friends who have had negative experiences with law enforcement and truly believe it was based on their race. I've had conversations with my son about how to conduct himself when he encounters law enforcement. So I understand, all of that, and feel why people of color have a lack of trust in the criminal justice system. I see all of that. I feel all of that. However, I've been a law enforcement officer for the past 26 years. And prior to that, I was in the military, in the Army. And I've had the experience of working with people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, and seeing us all come together for a common goal. And, it really opened my eyes to what, life should look like and how we should all work together and as one. And as a leader at a law enforcement agency, it's, my responsibility to set the tone and expectations for our officers. And something that, I really take to heart is, the good men and women that do this job every day. They go out, risking their own well-being to protect and serve others, and to see this profession be demonized as a racist profession, it truly hurts me to see that, because again, I know the men and women who do this work on a daily basis, and their heart's in the right place. So I think that's what it's going to take to move this conversation forward. We have to recognize that people of color have a lack of trust in the system and have experienced bad policing, while at the same time acknowledging that we have a good police force with good people doing the right thing. And if we all can agree on those concepts and come together to build and work to make things better, I think we'll be in a lot better place. But like I said, when we start with our sign and whatever slogan we want to back ourselves into the corner with, everyone's on defensive mode, and there's finger pointing, and we can't make any progress. So I hope that answered the question, and kind of gave you an idea of how I have a foot in both camps, and that's kind of how I come at it.
I think, yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I think it points to very broad issues that touch every hot topic in our country now, that it's important to get beyond that surface, to get past just the headline or the Facebook post or the tweets, to get beyond the very first part of it into the depth of what leads people to think and feel the way that they do.
I agree.
For that. Yeah. Before moving on to the next topic, I thought it was important to point out that we do not have someone on this call who is Alaska Native or any indigenous voices here. And also we're a bunch of, let's say, aging men that, so we fit not exactly all the same demographic, but we're still a narrow slice. And I don't have a solution to that other than to say scheduling and functionality of the conversation made it such that this is the people we have. But I just want to acknowledge that failing on my part in gathering a conversation, and we hope to reach out more in the future. One in particular specific comment that people were asking about was the potential for body cameras to be in the police force here in Anchorage soon. And we're going to wrap up our conversation here soon. So real briefly, I wonder if I could hear from each of you what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. Well, I'll start, it's pretty simple, really. I think from the police department perspective, we welcome body cameras. We think that's great. I think most of our officers would be happy to have those. In fact, I've been asked by some of our patrol officers when we're getting them, because in their minds, it's going to show that they're doing the right things virtually all the time and help protect them against false accusations. So, and they're used to having, we already have in-car camera systems, so they're already accustomed to having a camera system that they deal with. So I think that generally speaking, they're supportive of it. The main issue for the police department is cost. They're expensive for a department our size, somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million a year to have not just the cameras. I think people think, oh, well, you know, if I go buy a GoPro at, you know, my favorite department store and just hang it on my body, like that's not that expensive and it's easy to deal with. But if you think of, you know, upwards of 450 officers all recording 10 hours of video a day, and then trying to storage that, but also catalog it so we can go back and find it when we need to. And, you know, all of the back end things that need to happen, it's complicated. So, like I said, generally, we're very supportive of body cameras. We would like to have a discussion with the community about how those get implemented, because I think we forget sometimes that we're not just recording a police officer whenever the body camera is turned on. We're recording an Anchorage resident also. And I think that taking that person's perspective into account when we talk about how we're going to manage all that is very important. In fact, I would say the majority of the time, the only person shown in the video is probably going to be a resident and not the officer. And so I think that's just an important perspective to remember. And then it's just a matter of funding. Is the community willing to pay for that? I'm not a big fan of unfunded mandates. As the head of the agency, I'm responsible for managing the budget. So I just want to make sure it's something we all agree we can afford and that it's funded correctly. But otherwise, I think we're totally willing to do it.
Okay. And Kevin, are you also on board with that idea? You're muted though, my friend.
Okay. Yes, I am in agreement with it, because I look at it from the approach that it's both, it serves as a good purpose for both sides, because if there are complaints or if there's a need to prove, as a legal term, beyond a reasonable doubt, you know that saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So if you look at it from that approach, it's beneficial for, you know, for both, for law enforcement as well as the community as a whole. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's a practical idea, and I have to agree with Justin. It's all about the money.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, it's terrible that things always seem to boil down to that, but you know, it's an expense that we're going to have to deal with. We're totally willing to do it. I just want to make sure that the community understands what that expense is and they're okay with it. I mean, I think that's an important part of any government function, is that the people that we serve understand, you know, what they're agreeing to pay for and what the parameters are.
Yeah, you can throw that analogy in. There's no free lunch.
Well, speaking of lunch, we're creeping up on lunch hour, so I'm going to ask for 2 closing thoughts. And the first one is this. Martin Luther King picked up on the philosophy of the beloved community, in which we move forward together in the spirit of redemption and reconciliation, not in the spirit of simply overcoming our adversary, but in making our adversary our neighbor and our partner. Within police work, of course, you are called sometimes to use force and to subdue someone who you don't have the time in that moment to say, be my beloved neighbor. But in the long term, I get the sense that, Justin and Ken, that this is your goal, that in the long term, you've talked about building trust, building community. If you were to give perhaps one thought on how we can move forward together, and not only with the NAACP and people of color, but also with those people at the rally who intentionally sought to interfere and intimidate people of color. How can we reach out to build the bridges, to build that beloved community together? And I'll ask that from all three of you before we close.
Well, I mean, that's the challenging question, right? It's really hard. It's really easy to say everyone has the right to think and say and do whatever they want because we live in a free country. But as soon as your neighbor says something that you completely and vehemently disagree with, that philosophy becomes challenging. And so I think that, again, it falls back to being respectful of what other people think, but also at the same time trying to help your neighbor understand, what, if you have someone that has a belief that, just because someone's skin color is a certain tone, that means something about them. I think you just have to reach out and try to help them to understand. And I'll be honest, I don't know what all the right answers to this are. I'm sure if I did know what the right answers were, I could travel around the country and be spectacularly famous solving problems everywhere I went. It's very hard. I mean, if you think about it, this is probably one of the most difficult things that we face as adult human beings, or even as children, right? Is confronting someone who completely disagrees with us on something and somehow working past that to some sort of cooperative reconciliation. It's hard. You have to be dedicated to it. You have to believe that the outcome is worth the effort, and you have to really try to get past those things. So I think, again, it comes back to each and every one of us can be leaders, whether it's in our neighborhood or in our family or in our circle of friends, and be that person that demonstrates that behavior. Other people will want to follow that, and I think that's how we get there. But it is not simple. It will not be easy, and it will take, everyone will actually have to be dedicated to that outcome, I think.
Do you want to go, Kevin, or?
Sure. From a personal perspective and the way I grew up, a comment my mom made to me long ago is that, baby, you're not dark enough to be fully accepted in the Black community, and you're not light enough to be fully accepted in the white community. I actually went to the last high school in Oakland, California that was desegregated, which was Skyline High School. And the last day of school, we had a race riot. And my cousin, who's now deceased, you'd swear up and down that he was Caucasian, but he was my first cousin, Jerry Washington. Long ponytail, straight hair, and so forth. Blonde hair, blue eyes, but he was my first cousin. And I told him that day, because the brothers said, "Why are you protecting this white boy?" I said, "This white boy is my blood. This is my first cousin." So I just told him, stand back to back with me, because growing up, I was considered, out of all my cousins, I was the crazy one. So I'd fight anybody if it came down to my family. And one of the quotes that I live by and have ultimately lived by because of its meaning, and this was from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the quote is, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." And I've lived my life that way since my inception, I guess, since November 29, 1954. I've been challenged since I was born. I was 3 pounds at birth. I was born with polio, yellow jaundice. I've been given my last rites 3 times. I'm still here. My firm belief is that I have not fulfilled my purpose on this earth, so God has not brought me home. So I think I can help at any point in time to build relations better within the community I live in. It's just that I'm willing to sit down with anybody and hear both sides of the issue and try to work out a solution. Recently, I was selected to this new task force or group that's going to be associated with DOJ, and I hope that I think it's 15 participants, various participants. I hope that we sit down and be honest about it, and truly look for solutions. And I'm grateful, like we've all said, that we have not really had to encounter some of the dissension and I don't know, harassment, discrimination, all the various things we've been witnessing on TV from around the lower 48. And I'm just thankful that we haven't gotten to that negativity, and hopefully we never do. So I think if we just continue the discussion, continue working and looking for solutions, it makes it better for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree, Kevin. And, I think continuing the discussion is important. And ultimately, I think we all have the same goal. We all live here in the community together, and we all want this to be a safe, welcoming environment for everyone. We all want our families and kids to live in a community where they're not, afraid of being discriminated against because of their race. And so that's a goal that I think we all have. And part of that, we're working hard every day to reach out and talk about these issues. I mentioned earlier on about building trust. The things such as diversifying the police department. Our recruiting sections are working really hard to get people of color at the department to be more reflective of the communities they serve. But we need the community's help for that. And I can tell you, it doesn't help when the narrative is that police are racist and police are, intentionally out, brutalizing people of color. We all know that is not the case. There's good people doing this job, and people of color need to know that, the police profession is an honorable profession that they are welcome to be a part of, and that we want them to be a part of. And so that it all goes into the education process where, people will have to, be educated about the police department and what is our role and how do we want the police to interact with our community. And again, that's where we are going out, interacting. COVID's kind of put a slowdown on some of our events, but that was the purpose behind it. Our Citizens Academy, where we're bringing in members of the public, Kevin, I know you're a graduate, into our Citizens Academy to learn about the police department, and we need more minorities participating in that program, to truly see what the police department is all about, to meet the people who work here and understand the heart that goes into serving. And I think if we continue those efforts, continue the conversation, we'll definitely be an example for the rest of the nation to follow. I think we're light years ahead of most communities. Not perfect, but we can continue building upon this and just be in a better place for everyone.
Thank you so much. Those are good words for us all to reflect on and do our best to live toward. I'm going to ask you for maybe about 30 seconds more for each of you. And this is an idea I didn't tell you I was going to do because it sort of occurred to me late in the game. Each Sunday morning in our worship service, we set aside a time just for the kids. When we meet in person, which we're not currently, they all rush forward and they sit here with Miss Tammy, who is our volunteer to speak to the kids, and we share a message just for them. Now, I didn't ask you what your religious beliefs are, so you don't have to pretend anything that is not in your heart, but I'm hoping that what I can do is on this coming Sunday morning, I'll start the video right here and ask each of you to say words of comfort to our kids. They see the news. They see what the world is like out there. Even the youngest kids are pretty smart and they see that there's this trouble. They can sense the tension. And we like to sort of give them a little bit of a Mr. Rogers vibe to remind them that they're each and every one of them special. They're each and every one of them made in God's image. Our children's group here is very diverse, and we want them all to know they're equally beloved by God and by us. Particularly police officers, we want them to know that you are safe and trusted individuals and a safe and trusted department if they ever feel insecure. And Kevin, if you want to just say that you care for them also and that they are cared for. Is that something that you would all be willing to do?
Sure.
So this is the point here. I'll kind of introduce the kids and you can introduce yourself. And so if you want to put religious terms in, that's fine, but you don't have to. Simply let the kids know that they are special and protected.
I would like to make one comment.
Yeah.
I guess it's a, excuse me, a comment of gratitude. And both Justin and Kenneth, neither one of you guys were here at the time, but it's a testimonial from me and from my heart in support of APD because of a family matter that happened years ago. I think it was 1984, when my youngest daughter was sexually assaulted by an Anchorage school district maintenance worker. And if it had not been for, at that time, it was Deputy Chief Rhodes, Ed Rhodes. And I have his name in my mind, but I can't think of it, the chief at that time. I could conceivably had been at that time, I would categorize it as put under the jail because of the hatred in my heart for what this man had done to my daughter, and I felt there was no the criminal justice system obviously was not fair because regardless of the fact I was, along with my daughter, forced to go down to APD. This is when APD was located at 3rd Avenue. No, excuse me, 6th Avenue.
Yep.
And with corrections connected to the same building, they were all together. And we had to go down there 5 or 6 separate times. And my daughter was forced to pick the same individual out of a lineup before somebody believed that the incident had occurred. Gail Frades was the district attorney at the time. And ultimately, what occurred where we felt the justice system failed us was that this man, and I remember his face, I remember his name to this day, but he wound up doing 1.5 days at 6th Avenue. That was it. Regardless of the fact he was indicted by the grand jury, Gail Frades, the district attorney, we had an omnibus hearing before the deceased Judge Moody. And ultimately what happened was Frades felt that he didn't feel comfortable with taking the testimony of a 12-year-old black child against a 36-year-old white male, regardless of the physical and forensic evidence that was presented and everything. And what this ultimately forced me and my family through, none of you guys can imagine having to give up your job, your car, your home, move into a homeless shelter for a year, keep my family together, and still come out of it on the other side, maintaining that unity. And it hurts me to this day. So I just want to say thank you, Chief, both Justin and Ken. APD helped me, my family.
Sorry.
Thanks,
Kevin.
guys.
Oh,
So
I understand, Kevin. Thank you for sharing that. That's,
thanks, Kevin.
you said we can't imagine what that is like, and I think that's absolutely true. That to deal with
I'm
that.
sorry.
You don't have to apologize, my friend. That's
Sorry, brother.
With you, man. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
I
Well,
can say one thing, keeping my family together. My oldest baby, when she graduated from West High, she earned an academic scholarship to Johns Hopkins,
Wow.
and she graduated, and she's still there because they wouldn't let her go. My second baby, who graduated from East High, she's now a senior master sergeant in the Air Force,
Hmm.
and she got transferred from J. Baird to the Pentagon. And then my youngest, my son, he lives in an assisted living home. But I'll be damned, I kept my family together.
Absolutely.
And successful.
That's strength. That is real strength.
would you each be willing to pause for a moment while I pray for us?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Let's pray. God, I give you thanks for Kevin's courage to share those very, very difficult experiences with us. We join Kevin in his gratitude for the good work of the APD. And as he said, we are just so moved and happy with the fact that he kept his family together, even in the face of what must have seemed to be insurmountable odds. As our country right now faces what can sometimes seem like insurmountable odds, we know from his experience that with enough faith and love and perseverance, we can accomplish anything, and we can build the beloved community together. I pray for the health and the safety of all the people here on this call, for all the police officers, and for all the people of Anchorage as we move forward. And as we all together approach Election Day with perhaps some trepidation, we pray that fact and compassion will point the way forward. We pray these things in the spirit of hope. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it. Kevin, thanks for sharing that. I love you. We're here with you. And officers, thank you for your hard work. I've also had positive experiences with the APD, and I want to thank you for that as well.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Close up now. Gentlemen, if you're willing to stick around and say a word to the kids, let us know. But for now, this will be what I stop uploading to YouTube. Thank you. So it's hard to shift moods sometimes. And Kevin, I certainly understand if you are more interested in signing off for now, or if you want to speak, that's fine. This, like I said, won't be part of the broader broadcast. We'll just show this section here to the kids, if that's okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, for sure.
Kevin, do you want to stick around?
Sure, I just need to go get me a Kleenex.
Absolutely. You go right ahead and I'll get started. So when you come back in, you just jump right into it, okay?
Okay.
Hi, children. It's great to have you here for our kids' time today. I have two friends with me today. This is Justin on that side and Ken on that side. And they, as you can see from their outfits, they are acrobats. No. As you can see from their uniforms, how they are dressed, they are police officers here with the Anchorage Police Department. And I think it's important that we're always honest with our kids. And kids, maybe you've seen in the news that there are some things happening in our country that can look scary. If you just look at the news really briefly, or if you just look at the front page of a newspaper, you might sometimes think, boy, there's scary stuff going on. We wanted to take a moment to remind you that you are special and safe and you are being protected. And so I'm going to ask my two friends here to introduce themselves and just say whatever you want to say. I don't know who wants to start. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So my name's Justin. I'm the chief of police here in Anchorage. And there's almost 450 people that look just like me and Ken and dress just like us. And we're here for you every day. And sometimes scary things happen in life, but your police officers are always here to help you and to keep you safe. And that is what we are dedicated to all day, every day. So we want you to feel safe living in Anchorage, and just know that we're always here for you.
Thank you, Justin. Ken, why don't you say a word?
So good morning. I'm Ken. I'm the Deputy Chief of Police here at the Anchorage Police Department. And I know 2020, this year has been a challenge for everyone. And I just want you all to know that we're so proud of you for being strong and continuing to move forward in these uncertain times, with you not being in school full time and having to do your lessons at home. We're just so proud of everything you're accomplishing. And we want you to know that we are here around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making sure that our community is safe. And we're all in this together, and don't give up. There's going to be better days ahead, and just keep strong and stay safe. We're proud of you.
Thank you, Ken. And kids, you probably saw that my friend Kevin is right there, and his work is a reminder that all of God's children, regardless of what skin color we have, we are all God's children together. We're all sisters and brothers. And so I'm going to ask Kevin to take about 30 seconds or so to say hello to our kids.
I don't know what time of day it is now, but
It'll be morning when I show them this.
it's still morning. Okay, good thing. Well, I, for one, as a parent of 3 children, am proud to say that they've all successfully gone through school. And hopefully that's what happens to all of you. You complete your educational processes, go on to become young adults and successful young adults, and either go on to trade schools or college, whichever your goal is in life. And believe that we all support you. We're all parents ourselves, and we look forward for the best for our children. And one of the programs in my organization, the NAACP, what we've are getting off the ground is a reading lab. So if you have concerns or issues or problems with learning to read and so forth, feel free to have your parents contact us, and we're willing to help any child. Doesn't matter race, creed, or color. If you have problems with reading, you're welcome to come to us, and we'll offer and provide help where necessary and needed. In other words, if you need the help, you're welcome to come to us.
So kids, you now know 3 new friends that you can contact if you ever need help, whether it's help with safety or help with learning or help with anything at all. You can reach all of these folks by calling the church. Your parents know the number. It's 272-6411, and I will definitely help you find what you might need. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here for the kids' time today. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks, man. Tim,